On Valentine's Day, my husband's mistress asked me to babysit for her while she went on a date with him. I thoughtfully arranged the venue and restaurant for their date. They happily went off, blissfully unaware that the restaurant would turn into fireworks that night. With Valentine's Day around the corner, I asked Bob about his plans. He coldly replied he had something going on and wouldn't be back. He said that, got dressed and headed out. I knew he wasn't leaving for work but to see Amy. I also knew he'd spend Valentine's Day with her, especially since their child was about to turn 2 months old. I smiled and said, "That's okay, take care." Bob gave me a surprised look, not quite understanding how I could still smile since I knew he had a child outside our marriage. A year ago, he had secretly started a family with his true love Amy, who quickly got pregnant and had a son. Bob had hidden it well, and I remained clueless until Amy, confident in having had a son, revealed it to me. In my past life, after finding out, I was furious and caused a huge scene with Bob, wanting to divorce him. Due to business ties between our families, he refused, turning our divorce into a drawn-out battle. Meanwhile, Amy kept provoking me. She once asked to meet up, telling me she enjoyed spending Bob's money on houses, cars, and jewelry without the responsibilities of a wife. And Timmy would still inherit as a legitimate child. Meanwhile, I had to care for the family and didn't even have access to the money. Why hold on to the position? Amy's words left me speechless. Illegitimate sons from men have inheritance rights, but women's don't, and they still compensate the man. What logic was that? After hearing that, I flipped the table in anger, yelling, "Get out!" I've always been hot-tempered, a spoiled princess at home, never one to hold back. I was disgusted by this couple and went to confront Bob that very night, saying I'd rather give up everything than not get a divorce immediately. Yet Bob still refused. After slapping him twice, he agreed, on the condition that I left with nothing. At the time, I thought it didn't matter since my family was wealthy. I divorced Bob quickly, a decision I later regretted, wishing I could slap myself again. I ended up dying alone and poor. When I closed my eyes and opened them again, somehow, I was reborn before the divorce. By then, Amy had already confronted me, and I threw a fit at Bob, putting a freeze on their relationship. Bob barely came home around that time and only showed up to grab his stuff. "Take care out there, Bob," I said gently as he left. Seeing my calm demeanor, Bob's expression softened. "I'm off," he said. "You're going to see Amy, right?" "With the baby, it's only right to spend more time with her," I said. Bob seemed surprised, stepping back and asking, "You're not angry?" I walked to the door, fixing his collar. Why would I be? Important people like you often have mistresses, don't they? It's quite normal. Previously, I was angry because I hadn't thought it through. I was too impulsive. After visiting my parents, they helped me see things differently. I married a successful man, and naturally, there are responsibilities. "Can't expect perfection," I said. Bob finally smiled, holding my hand and saying, "Monica, I'm glad you understand. Your family is reasonable." I said, "Bob, I love you. Why don't we have Amy over for dinner sometime?" Unsurprisingly, Amy didn't come. I wasn't in a rush. Now I had all the time in the world to deal with her. After that, I stopped throwing fits and never asked about Bob's whereabouts. I served him with a smile every day, appearing very obedient. Bob trusted me more and praised me, saying, "Monica, this behavior is good. If you and Amy can get along, I won't shortchange you." I swallowed my disgust, keeping a gentle demeanor, helping him with his coat. "Don't worry. I'll be like a sister with her." Bob nodded with satisfaction. Men dream of having multiple wives who get along like sisters, but they don't understand love is exclusive. Women are people too. Just like men don't accept being cuckolded, neither do women. "I'll convince her," he said. Over the weekend, Bob called, "Monica, Amy's coming over for dinner tonight." My eyes cold, I calmly replied, "Great." After hanging up, I instructed the kitchen to prepare a feast and cleaned out a nice, spacious bedroom with a good view. I made it elegant and cozy. I took photos and sent them to Bob. This is your and Amy's room. From now on, we're both your wives. Bob was moved and replied, Monica, you're so understanding. With a wife like you, what more could a husband want? I clenched my fingers, smiling brightly. As a wife, this is my duty. In ancient times, a wife would bring a concubine for her husband. I've been married for 2 years without kids, so it's about time. Bob praised my actions, even assuring me, Monica, you're my official wife. Your kids are the heirs. Amy's is just the firstborn. Chuckling inside, I thought, does he really see himself as some ancient nobleman, distinguishing between heirs and firstborns of concubines? Hilarious. With those words, I'm at ease, I told him. Take care of yourself. Don't overwork. After the call, I went downstairs. I knew Amy had planted a spy in the villa, a housekeeper, whom I'd always befriended, never guessing she'd been bought off. Downstairs, I deliberately chatted with the housekeeper, even playing Bob's voice message for her. I doubted Amy would remain indifferent to the distinction between heir and firstborn. If Bob had such notions, future inheritance distribution would differ. A woman like her, with youthful looks, might claim it's true love but ultimately aims for money. That evening, Bob brought Amy home, and we had a cheerful dinner. With Bob present, Amy and I acted like long-lost sisters, getting along so well. The family should always be harmonious like this. Bob was very pleased with our performance. After dinner, Bob went to his study to work. Amy and I sat in silence in the living room, only the TV making noise. Eventually, Amy said calmly, Monica, I didn't know you were so magnanimous. I said calmly, as a wife, I should be magnanimous. Men tend to like young and beautiful women. After a couple of years, when the novelty wears off and Bob likes another woman, I'll still be gracious about it. Amy, fresh out of college, became Bob's assistant, scheming to get into Bob's bed, eventually becoming his mistress. Amy said, Monica is really generous. I looked Amy in the eyes and said, when there's one, there'll be another. How could a man of such a big family only have 2 women? Amy's face changed slightly, then she sneered, though you pretend to be generous, inside you're burning with hatred. You're trying to use your generosity to keep Bob's heart and hold your position as his wife. It's pathetic. I raised my eyebrows, but if I don't step down as the main wife, what do you count as? Amy's face darkened. That night, Amy clung to Bob, refusing to let him speak to me. At bedtime, Amy pulled Bob into the new room I had set up for them and made a scene all night, deliberately provoking me. I still didn't get angry and calmly sent them off the next day. Bob praised my gracious gesture. Unwilling to yield, Amy came over to the villa with Timmy in her arms. As she played with Timmy, she smiled at me, Monica, all things are superficial. Having a son is what really matters, right? I didn't reply. Finally, she got cocky and said, Valentine's Day is coming up. Since you're so generous, why not watch Timmy for me that day? I want to go on a date with Bob. She was pushing me, trying to make me lose it, hoping I'd ask for a divorce. I secretly clenched my fist and said coldly, sure. At the same time, a wicked idea popped into my head. I want those 2 scumbags gone. In my past life, there was a news report. On Valentine's Day, someone set a bomb at the Garden restaurant in Sea City. When the fireworks went off, boom, the place would get blown to bits. If I could trick those 2 into dining there, it would solve them forever. I suppressed my anger and smiled. All right, as long as you dare to leave Timmy with me. Why wouldn't I dare? Amy raised her eyebrow. I'll even hand Timmy over to you right in front of Bob. The implication being, if anything happened to Timmy, I'd be held responsible, right? I smiled back. If you're bold enough to hand him over, I'm bold enough to take him. In a cozy cafe with only a few patrons, I sat with a man in a secluded corner, the light above casting a warm glow. The man pulled out a USB drive from his pocket and handed it to me solemnly. Everything's in here. I took it and slipped it into my bag. The man also took out a stack of photos from a folder. It showed a man shaking hands with someone else, both grinning smugly. Just as you suspected, Nikki is indeed making secret deals with M-Corp people. Last time, you told me to wait at the hotel, and sure enough, we got their photos. The man said, Nikki is leaking financial secrets to M-Corp and is doing everything to persuade the chairman to accept the Tourism City project. Expressionless, I flipped through the photos and nodded, great job. I'll transfer the remaining 100,000 to you. Thanks. After leaving the cafe, I drove straight home. In my last life, our family went bankrupt, burdened with debts, all because of my uncle Nicky's betrayal. Nicky colluded with M-Corp to seize our assets and forced us to take over the heavily landmined Tourism City project. The Tourism City project was worth $5 billion, and if anything went wrong, it would be catastrophic. It was precisely the Tourism City project that dragged our family down in the previous life. After the bankruptcy, Bob used to drive by and taunt me, Monica, look at yourself, why did you insist on divorcing me? He always resented my insistence on divorce and hated that I slapped him, wounding his pride, so he constantly pestered me after the Sim family's bankruptcy. I still remember us struggling to make ends meet, selling barbecue by the roadside. Bob would bring Amy to the stand and insisted that I drink with them. Amy, smiling sweetly, would say, Monica, get me a Coke. Monica, how could you bring me a warm one? Monica, I've changed my mind, I want a cold one. Later, Bob made me drink, saying he'd give me 500 if I drank 5 beers. 500, I used to not bother picking it off the ground. But for money, I really did drink those 5 beers, then reached out, I drank them, where's my 500? Bob blandly replied, is that how you speak to customers? Amy giggled next to him, Monica, remember your place, you're not my wife anymore. If you want money, bow and say thank you. I trembled with anger, but I knew if I didn't do as they said, they'd surely find other ways to torture me. So, I bowed my head to Bob in humiliation, thank you, Bob. Bob searched his pockets, no cash. I have some. Amy jumped from his side, pulling out 5 bills from a Chanel bag, throwing them on the ground as I reached out to take them, pick it up. Both of them laughed together, thoroughly amused. The sickening feeling swelled up inside me. I quickly parked my car to calm down before driving home again. Once reborn, the first thing I did was inform my dad about Nicky's betrayal, but he trusted Nicky too much and scolded me. Helpless, I secretly hired a private investigator to look into Nicky's connections, hoping to gather solid evidence. Half an hour later, I got home. Monica, you're back? My brother Raymond looked surprised in the spacious villa. I need to talk to Dad, I said. Where is he? In the study, my brother replied. I hurried to the study. My dad looked up confused. Monica, you're home? I shut the oak door and laid the photos on the desk. Dad, Nicky is secretly in contact with M Group. The CEO of M Group was a fierce competitor against my dad. Seeing the photos, my dad's face changed slightly. I took out the USB drive, plugged it into the computer. Inside were the negatives of the photos and some recordings. The evidence was undeniable. I said, Dad, please don't take the Tourism City project. My dad was silent for a long time, then smiled bitterly, it's already done. When I returned to Bob's house, it was already 9 p.m. I sat on the single chair by the large window, lost in thought. The rain outside pitter-pattered softly, and Bob still hadn't come home. The empty house was eerily silent. Marriage is supposed to mean support and warmth from each other. So why, after getting married, do I feel more lonely, more cold? Bob was my high school classmate and someone I had a crush on in my youth. That spring when the flowers were blooming, he walked under the cherry blossom tree in his jersey, holding a basketball. With a glance back, his eyes seemed to shine with the light of spring, making my heart flutter. When I returned from studying abroad and learned he was my betrothed, I didn't hesitate to agree. We had a time when we politely respected each other, had a brief passionate romance like usual couples, and then quickly moved into marriage. But soon after, he suddenly had another woman. Back in my bedroom, I took out my secret box. Inside was an old photo of that boy. I traced my fingers over it. The boy in the picture flashed a peace sign with a radiant smile, showing small white teeth, pure in his youth. Who would have thought that over a decade later, he would turn into a stubborn, arrogant, disgusting man who makes you want to throw up? Or maybe, what I once admired was just an illusion from those youthful days. Never really him. I picked up the picture and ripped it into pieces, tossing them out the window without a second thought. Watching the paper shreds fall into the rain, I picked up my phone and called Bob. Bob, are you interested in the Cultural Tourism City project? With my enthusiastic pitch, Bob seemed slightly interested. When I wanted to chat more, a delicate voice chirped through the phone. Oh, it's Monica again. Monica, it's late, don't bother us. Gripping my phone tightly, Bob's voice came in. We're discussing business. What business could you possibly have with Monica? She's not having kids or working, so what is there to talk about? Amy chimed in. Right, Monica? I paused before asking, Bob, do you agree with her? He didn't answer. Amy's voice got louder. Bob, I'll get jealous if you touch me tonight. Okay, whatever you want. Bob soothed her like a child and told me, Monica, Amy is young, just a kid, don't take it to heart. Young? Sure, I'm almost 30, but Amy is 24. That's an adult, not some kid, if he wants me to indulge her. Got it, don't worry, I'll let it go, I said over the phone. Be with her then, she doesn't want you on the phone, discuss it tomorrow, Amy whined, I want you to be with me. Bob seemed caught, telling me, let's talk tomorrow. If it were my past self, I'd be crying by now, but I sweetly said, all right. While she gets a cozy little place with you, I want one for myself too. Bob blurted out, I'll take you shopping tomorrow. Thanks, I replied cheerfully, hanging up with a smug smile. Bob's trash, he can stay with Amy, I'll just take the money. Watching the light rain outside, I slowly smiled. Amy and Bob, just wait for Valentine's Day. Uncle Nicky sat defeated in the chair, listening to Dad's yelling. I walked in and said, Dad, brother, can you step out? I want to talk to Uncle alone. Monica, say something for me. Uncle didn't mean it, Nicky cried, covering his face. Your dad insists on sending me to jail. I don't want to go to prison, Monica. I patted his shoulder. Uncle, I'm here to help. Nicky immediately uncovered his face, looking up at me. Really? Yes, I smiled, but you need to do something for us. What? He asked. Use the way you fooled my dad to trick Bob. Nicky was dumbfounded, stammering, trick Bob. Yes. I stood behind him, whispering in his ear, you're close with people from the M Group, they trust you. The M Group wants to offload the Cultural Tourism City to make money, they don't care whose pocket it comes from. The project hasn't officially started yet, once Bob joins, we can freely exit. Although the Sim family has taken over the Cultural Tourism City project, the paperwork is complex. As soon as we find someone to take over, a quick exit might cost some penalty fees, but won't lead to bankruptcy. But? Nicky asked incredulously, isn't Bob your husband? He's not my husband, I chuckled, he's Amy's husband. Back at Bob's place, I was surprised to see he was home. Monica, was everything okay last night? He politely asked. When I first learned about him and Amy, I went ballistic. Bob despised me back then and wouldn't speak to me so gently. He came back after his flight spat with Amy to check on me. It seems my submissive acts in recent days have paid off. No biggie. I shook my head. Amy is young and frank, I understand. To which he replied, glad you get it. Bob, I understand, but that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, I said, feeling aggrieved. I keep being the bigger person, but she repeatedly provokes me. It's frustrating. I teared up, acting it's not that hard. Bob had noticed my changes lately, knew Amy was at fault, and comforted me. "You've worked hard." Despite his attempts, I didn't relent. I reminded him, "She has a little nest, while I don't." "All right, I'll take you house hunting," Bob conceded, much to my delight. A man's guilt doesn't last long, so I seized the moment. We went to a luxury residence and picked out a mansion worth over 10 million. I insisted it be in my mom's name as a gift, not mine. Bob hesitated, and I argued, "We're legally married, so you're partially buying it for yourself. How is that gifting me? What you gave Amy, now that's a complete gift. I have to have what Amy got." Bob didn't want to lose face in public and had plans with the cultural tourism city money, so he agreed. I called my mom, we sealed the deal on the house. Afterward, I dragged Bob to a luxury store, indulging in lavish spending. The old me was prideful, determined to assert independence, refusing to ask Bob for anything. Now, I know how foolish that was. If you don't spend a man's money, some other woman will. With my mom there, Bob was embarrassed to protest and paid up. I bought several luxury bags, diamonds worth hundreds of thousands, jade bracelets worth tens of thousands, and a jade Buddha for my mom for 10 grand. After shopping, I just handed everything over to my mom for her to take home. I mean, if there's a divorce and we have to split assets, anything left at Bob's place would be joint property and Amy's kid would get a slice. I'm not leaving a dime for that kid. After shopping, I discussed the tourism city project with Bob. Guys love making money, and Bob's super ambitious. He's been officially in charge of Brown Group for only a year and needs a big win to prove himself. The tourism city is being developed by M Group, and they are willing to sell it to us at a low price. We've already invested and want you to join as well. I gave a brief intro, but honestly, I wasn't too clear on the details. My uncle Nicky is in the know. So, I reached out to Nicky to have him discuss it with Bob. If Nicky can spin a line on my dad, he can certainly handle young Bob. Bob doesn't like or trust me, but Nicky's sweet talk and the guys from M Group setting a trap, he quickly agreed. In just 3 days, Bob, just like my dad back then, thought it was a big opportunity and quickly poured $1 billion into the tourism city project. I didn't expect he'd go that big. I thought he'd watch for a bit and invest just a little, but he was so reckless. I don't think it's because he trusts me, because if he did, he wouldn't have a woman on the side and a kid, and I couldn't push him to invest so much money. He invested this much only because he's greedy and foolish. After checking out the tourism city, Bob left with the folks from M Group, and I headed home. And right there I saw a familiar figure, Mary. I'd kept things under wraps, so she just got back. But it was too late, Bob already took the bait. Sitting on the couch, Mary politely asked, "Monica, that tourism city, is it dependable?" I said, "Uncle says it's pretty reliable." Bob's dad was shrewd and smart, but a year ago he had a sudden stroke and was paralyzed, couldn't even talk. Mary was at the nursing home taking care of him, and Bob took over early. If Bob's dad were here, we couldn't have tricked Bob, and no way would Bob dare have another woman and a kid. His dad didn't necessarily love me but was clear-headed, understanding the need to not mess up business ties. Mary's different from the old man. She doesn't see or hear a thing about Amy. Amy's been hanging around for days, and she said zip. If not for the big investment in the tourism city, she wouldn't have rushed back. I remember her warning me in my past life, "If you can't have kids, does our family end?" No matter what Amy did, she gave us our first grandson, and you've got to put up with it. I didn't want to put up with it then, and I won't now. While I was chatting with Mary, Amy suddenly walked in with Timmy, calling out, "Mom." Mary stood up beaming and went over, saying, "Amy. Here, let me hold the big grandson." What a good boy. One naturally calling her mom, the other naturally responding. I felt more like an outsider. Timmy was crying his lungs out, and Amy said, "Mom, he needs a walk." "Sure, let's take the grandson out." Mary left with Timmy. Only Amy and I were left. "Monica, I hear you're going all out to help Bob with business?" sneered Amy. Seems like it won't. Bob hasn't been resting at my place these days. Amy sneered, but I'm no fool. If the mountain won't come to me, I'll go to it, she spat. So the moment you heard Mary's back, you rushed over with Timmy? I replied coolly. You have your tricks, and I have my bridges, Amy said smugly. Monica, without a child, you can never beat me. I was unfazed. Amy, didn't you know being with Bob means women need to love each other? You're so jealous. What'll happen when there's another sister? Bob loves me. He'd never love another woman. She snapped indignantly. I smiled. He used to tell me the same thing. Our conversation ended tensely. Amy, to irk me, moved right in. Neither Mary nor Bob said anything against it. Like it was the most natural thing. Their supportive attitude made Amy even more cocky, parading her son around, openly and slyly showing off to me each day. After Mary checked the company's status, she returned to the nursing home. With her skills, she didn't see any issues. Once she left, it was just me, Bob, and Amy left in the house. Time rolled around to the day before Valentine's. While the family was eating, I intentionally asked Bob, what plans do you have for tomorrow? We can't all go on a date together, right? Bob paused. Amy laid down her chopsticks, smiling. Monica, Bob and I are going out tomorrow. Feigning stubbornness to rile Amy, I insisted, I'm Bob's wife. I should spend Valentine's with him. Who do you think you are? Amy stormed off, dropping her chopsticks, and Bob chased after her. Don't know what they talked about upstairs, but Amy came running down with a smile, saying, Monica, tomorrow Bob and I are going out. You can stay home and watch Timmy. I hear you're a good wife, broad-minded. Our date plans tomorrow are for you to design. Make sure to plan a perfect date for Bob and me, all right? Amy's smile was spiteful, trying to outshine me to assert her status and goad me into leading. Bob came down and coughed. Monica, just do as Amy said. Amy, leaning on Bob, tauntingly glanced my way, increasingly arrogant, and Bob doting on her. Bob's way overconfident, thinking being part of the tourism city deal means he doesn't have to care about us or respect me. To him, I'm just a pawn. I sighed and said, all right. Originally, I was racking my brain trying to get the two of them to go to the garden restaurant. But now, Amy's volunteering. I turned around with a silent smirk. I booked the garden restaurant for their dinner. That place is super fancy. It's famous as a romantic spot for couples. The floor has tons of fun spots, with a big platform that lets you overlook the city. Monica's plan was perfect. Amy was pleased. Bob was pleased. And I was pleased. We were all pleased. The next day, Valentine's Day, arrived. Early morning, Amy handed me the kid with a nasty grin, saying, Monica, take care of Timmy today. I didn't take the kid. Instead, I let the nanny take him. I said calmly, enjoy your date. She laughed, oh, we will. Sitting on the couch, Timmy babbled in his cradle. I picked up a little ball to play with him. The butler beside me watched nervously. I looked up, smiling, don't worry. I won't do anything to Timmy. He didn't get to choose his parents, he's innocent. James was taken aback and forced a smile. Madam, I never thought otherwise. I smiled too and called all the staff over. I need to go out. I'm leaving Timmy with the butler. If anything happens to him, it'll be the butler's responsibility, understood? I instructed firmly. The butler was startled. The other staff exchanged looks. I asked again, understood? Understood. They replied. I grabbed my bag and left, randomly finding a clothing store, buying a hoodie, pants, sneakers, and sunglasses. Booked a hotel room. Sat around waiting. Close to 6, I changed, put on sunglasses and a mask, all geared up, and left. Dinner for the two of them was set for 7. At 7:10, the restaurant was going to explode like fireworks. I wanted to see them turn into fireworks. It had to be beautiful. Stepping out of the hotel, Valentine's Day was all around. There were lights and Valentine's decorations everywhere. Balloons and glow sticks added to the festive vibe. I stood by the building, looking up at the city's landmark. It was grand, modern, and beautiful. Past news reports said the bomber was a highly intelligent, mentally unstable guy. His girlfriend left him for a rich guy, so he hated society's love for money and hated women. In a fit of rage, he made a time bomb and planted it in the Garden restaurant as revenge. At 7:10, the bomb exploded. Over 20 people died instantly, and the explosion caused a fire that killed over 50. "Sister, want to buy a flower?" A little girl's voice came from below. I looked down, seeing a young girl with a basket of roses, her face innocent. I shook my head. The girl turned and asked others while walking into the building. The entrance was crowded, couples hand in hand, smiling sweetly. Before tying the knot, I might have smiled like that, too. I blinked and suddenly realized. Sure, the explosion could be my revenge. But over 50 other people would die. If I just called the police, I could stop those deaths entirely. Revenge or conscience? Suddenly, they weighed equally on a scale. If I did nothing, the horrific explosion would happen again, wounding countless lives, becoming a scar in everyone's heart. If I warned the cops, I couldn't exact my revenge. Those two bastards would continue to live free. I've endured and waited for this moment. Should I give it up? And if I called the cops, how would I explain knowing about the bomb? I'd end up in a bigger mess. What do I do? Time ticked by. I couldn't decide, pacing back and forth in the square. Near 7, I stopped, looking up in the crowded street. Among the flashing neon lights, a jeweler's billboard was bright and massive. The wedding ring on it, crystal clear, lured countless women to marriage. My eyes felt a little warm. Among the dead 50, someone must have been happy, right? Taking a deep breath, I dug out my phone. Revenge or conscience? I chose conscience. Just as I was about to call, a flash caught my eye. A phone lay on the ground, still lit. Even fate was lending me a hand. Relieved, I picked it up, swiftly dialing the cop hotline before the screen went dark. If I called fast enough, they couldn't trace it back to me. There's a bomb in the Garden restaurant. It will explode at 7:10. Hurry and deal with it. Cut the red wire to stop the countdown. I didn't wait for the operator, quickly repeated the message thrice, then tossed the phone and bolted. It was already 6:40, plenty of time for the cops to handle the 7:10 bomb. I looked at the building, a wave of frustration rising in my chest. After so much planning, just let those two scumbags go? No way. I gritted my teeth, ran into the building, and took the elevator to the Garden restaurant. It was already 6:55. I hit the ground level button on the elevator panel, stepped out, and quickly hit the same button on another elevator. Both elevators slowly descended. Soon enough, cop cars arrived with sirens blaring. A dozen officers rushed in. Everyone out. There's a bomb. Workers shouted. In an instant, a mass of people began screaming and running out of the building. The restaurant folks still didn't get it. From deep within the crowd, I yelled, "There's a bomb in the restaurant. It'll blow at 7:10. Run." Soon, informed staff joined in yelling, "Run. It's gonna blow." In seconds, people panicked and fled. Through the chaotic mass, I saw Bob and Amy get up to join the stampede. A crush of people surged down the corridor. With it being Valentine's, the observation deck was packed with people taking in the night view, all rushing for the elevators. Both elevators were swarmed, packed to the brim. Since I hit the ground floor button earlier, the elevators moved at a snail's pace, taking forever to come up. The commercial elevator might as well not bother. Panic-stricken, most chose to use the emergency stairs. Knowing the bomb would be dealt with, I confidently slipped into the emergency stairwell. With everyone scrambling for safety, no one noticed me lingering nearby. Even if they had, they wouldn't care. Before long, Bob was pulling Amy into the hallway, both looking panicked as they rushed down the stairs with the crowd. I adjusted my cap and followed them. When we got to a dark spot in the stairwell, I kicked Bob hard from behind. He tumbled forward unexpectedly and rolled down like a ball. Years of living easy and indulging himself had taken a toll on his body. This fall wasn't going to be easy on him. Amy, getting dragged down with him, stumbled too. Someone fell. Someone shouted, but nobody stopped. In a life-or-death situation, everyone just wanted to escape. I helped up the person Bob had knocked over, and as Bob tried to get back on his feet, I stomped on his bleeding head with all my might in the chaos. His weak cries disappeared beneath the trampling feet of numerous people rushing over him. Amy was struggling on the steps, crying loudly, and I wanted to kick her too. But the crowd was too strong, pushing me along, leaving me no choice but to reluctantly hold back. The terrified mob at the back couldn't see what was happening up front. They just trampled over the two, rumbling down the staircase. The power of a stampede is no joke. I pulled up my hoodie, mission accomplished, and quietly returned to the hotel, changed my clothes, and headed to my parents' house, avoiding Bob's place altogether. That night, the bomb was defused. No one died, besides a few unlucky people who fell and got hurt. Bob and Amy got the worst of it. Bob was knocked out cold, while Amy had 2 broken ribs and her face was trampled. Her fake nose was crushed when fleeing crowds stepped all over her face. The police caught the person who planted the bomb but couldn't trace who tipped them off. They hadn't widely informed the mall staff, but somehow news leaked out, causing the panic and chaos. If there hadn't been a leak, my shouting in the garden restaurant wouldn't have been taken seriously. The police would have traced it back to me. But because the staff were shouting first, I never got questioned. It was like when I chose to follow my conscience, fate lent a helping hand. I got access to a phone with no owner, creating panic without detection. It also let me get my revenge. The bombing was a huge deal in our peaceful country, making headlines and drawing attention from the highest levels. Among those hurt, the story of Bob and his mistress getting trampled while meeting on Valentine's Day quickly trended online. People were commenting left and right, serves them right. Although they were hurt, they became targets of public ridicule. Mary came back that evening, found out Bob's fate was uncertain, and cried her eyes out in the hallway. Right then, I got a call from the nanny. "Ma'am, Timmy's throwing up and has diarrhea. It's pretty serious." "What?" Mary asked in a panic. "What's wrong with my grandson?" I handed her my phone. Bob was unconscious, and Mary had no outlet for her frustration, so she yelled, "Can't even take care of Timmy? What's the point of keeping you around?" She turned to me and demanded, "Bob and Amy went out. What about you? Where were you?" "Mom, I left early this morning," I explained. "Amy dumped Timmy on me. I didn't want to babysit, so I went out." "Isn't that allowed?" Mary was speechless. "Get my grandson here immediately," she yelled into the phone. Soon, the butler and nanny brought Timmy over, and he was taken to see a doctor. The doctor said he'd eaten something bad. "Mom, I left home early. I didn't feed Timmy anything," I said. "I always knew Amy was up to no good leaving Timmy with me. She must have given him something. What a despicable move." Luckily, I anticipated her scheming and never touched or fed Timmy, even left home early to avoid suspicion. It must have been the butler who gave Timmy something bad. I calmly said, "I didn't." The butler's face turned pale. "Mom, Amy, and the butler are good friends. The butler probably didn't mean to hurt Timmy, just couldn't handle him," I explained. In her rage, Mary grabbed the butler's hair, slapping her several times, and yelled, "Can't even care for a child. Useless. Get out. Don't let me see you again." The butler cried in helplessness. As I approached, I whispered in her ear, biting the hand that feeds you has its consequences. Do you know who the real lady of the house is? The butler trembled in fear. Get lost, or else, I grinned slyly. And just like that, Amy's informant was dismissed, the butler left in disgrace. Since she failed to care for Timmy, her reputation tanked, and no other wealthy families would hire her. I had no qualms calling her out as untrustworthy, delivering the final blow to her character. She couldn't stay in City C any longer. She had to leave. Thanks to modern medicine, the doctor quickly figured out what Timmy ate: laxatives. Go back and search. Mary was furious, ordering everyone to search the villa for the drugs, and she demanded that I not go home, even insisting on searching my room. She suspected me of drugging Timmy. I sneered. Her family never trusted me. Soon, someone reported they found laxatives in Amy's room. Mary looked shocked. I said, Mom, don't you get it? Amy tricked me into taking Timmy so she could run off. If anything happened to him, it would be on me. She drugged Timmy, handed him to me, and ran. When Timmy got sick, you'd blame me first. Seeing the evidence, Mary looked furious and said through gritted teeth, that witch. How dare she harm my grandson? If it weren't for her, my son wouldn't be in a coma. She's a jinx. I listened to her ranting, a slight smile on my face. Only Amy, Bob, and I knew about the meeting place. Mary thought Bob got hurt because Amy took him to the garden restaurant. She hated Amy for it. I wasn't going to explain. Mary, ruthless as ever, ordered Amy's things to be thrown out, selling the valuable stuff and tossing the rest. As soon as Amy woke up from surgery, Mary stood coldly in front of her and said, Give me the keys. What keys? Amy stammered. Your house keys, give them to me, Mary said coldly. Amy, a bit intimidated and unaware of the situation, reluctantly handed them over. Mary gave the keys to me, saying, Go to her house, take everything. This is my order. Once Bob wakes up, let him take back the house. And if he refuses? Mary glanced at Amy, I'll support you in taking it to court. After dealing with Amy, Mary left without another glance, heading back to be by Bob's side. No. Amy jumped out of bed, pulling at her wound and screaming in pain, You can't do this. I laughed, Amy, the law supports the wife in reclaiming shared property. Is this why you kept provoking me, trying to force a divorce? You were scared that day would come, that you'd lose everything, weren't you? The hospital room felt empty, just me and Amy. You witch. You're ruining me. Amy cried, You knew about the bomb and set us up. I raised an eyebrow, Amy, you asked me to plan your date. You okayed the place. Don't blame me. I approached her, speaking softly, The universe is on my side, what can I do? You witch. Amy cursed. My expression unchanged, I replied, You wreck families, drug your own Timmy to frame me. Look at yourself now. I finally offered a kind suggestion, Amy, you might want to check your nose. I walked out while she screamed, realizing her nose was ruined. According to Mary's orders, I had people move Amy's stuff to my place. In my past life, I knew I could reclaim property, but with Bob and Mary backing her, I was powerless. Now, Amy's downfall was largely thanks to Mary's willingness to deal with her. Amy lay unable to move. With her nose broken and ruined, the house was the least of her worries as she screamed for plastic surgery. Nobody paid her any mind. With Bob unconscious, the company was in chaos, needing a leader. Mary hurried back to stabilize things. The cultural tourism project was massive, needing a manager. Mary, stretched thin, chose family over others. Being Bob's wife, I was the logical choice for the project. Monica, the tourism project is in your hands, Mary said to me earnestly. When Bob wakes up, I want you two to have a child together. Your child would be the legitimate heir, unlike Amy's. Don't worry, your position is secure. I pursed my lips and replied, "Mom, don't worry, I'll handle it well." Now that I was in charge, things would be easier to manage. 2 weeks later, Bob finally woke up and moved to a regular room. He had no idea things had changed. I approached his bed, tossed him a stack of papers, and said coldly, "Bob, let's divorce." Bob was baffled, holding the divorce papers. "What's going on? Divorce?" "No." Bob frowned. "Monica, don't be ridiculous. You used to be so sensible." "Sensible?" I said. "I'd had enough. How have you treated me?" I pushed for divorce, and despite his pleas, I was firm. Bob was furious. "Monica, I'm still recovering. How can you do this to me?" Bob demanded. "What about Amy? How is she?" "You only care about Amy, so divorce me and let her take my place," I said. "You spend Valentine's Day with her and even have a kid. Why not divorce me?" "Our families are collaborating now," Bob said. "Don't even think about divorce. You used to get along with Amy, why change now? Rich men all have mistresses. Stop causing trouble, okay?" Suddenly, the door burst open, and several reporters rushed in, snapping photos of Bob. "Mr. Bob, we'd like to remind you that polygamy is illegal," one said. Bob was shocked. "Who let you in here?" No one answered him. I picked up the divorce papers, signed them. Bob's words were reported exactly as spoken. His Valentine's escapade with a mistress was public knowledge, and now this statement was out. Everyone supported my divorce. By the time Bob realized, even the cleaning lady was on my side. I never talked about the divorce before, so not only was Bob caught off guard, but Mary too. But I was ready for it, and there was nothing she could do to stop me. Mary naturally kicked me out of the company, took away my role as the head of the cultural and tourism project, trying to teach me a lesson. I left calmly. I began the divorce proceedings and went after the house and car Amy bought before. I also released Timmy's photos to prove that Bob was cheating. I won't protect the image rights of the mistress's kid. I want everyone to remember him. Make him and his mom infamous. The divorce went smoothly, and because public opinion was on my side, I got a huge chunk of the assets. Most of Amy's money was clawed back, which was split between me and Bob. The company wasn't hit much. The smart folks in PR never let me get involved in company affairs, and I didn't care to. So I had no rights to the company's stocks. But who cares, right? That cultural and tourism project will eventually sink the company. If I can't have it, Bob sure won't. I didn't want the company. I wanted Bob to feel the pain I once did. Amy got out of the hospital after 2 years of trouble, gaining nothing. Her face got messed up. Her nose was too damaged to fix properly, looking really weird. Bob had no interest in an ugly mess, and since Mary disliked her and revealed she drugged Timmy, Bob kicked her out. Not long after, Nikki's family pulled out completely from the cultural tourism project, safeguarding their assets. M Group had Bob's company in their sights, tore it apart, and left them the last to suffer. Bob's family was ruined. Bob ended up in massive debt, homeless. Mary had made a big donation to the nursing home before, and they promised to take care of her. She lived her later years peacefully there with Bob's father, but they couldn't help Bob get back on his feet or pay off the debt. Bob struggled to find work with Timmy in tow. Before long, he found Timmy a hassle and tossed him back to Amy. Amy didn't want Timmy. She believed she could snag another rich guy if she got her face fixed, and Timmy would only weigh her down, so she refused. The once grandson of the Bob family was unwanted. Bob finally went to Amy's hometown, dropped Timmy off on her parents in the county, and left. Amy left Timmy there with no concern. Timmy's unfortunate birth led to his miserable fate. I didn't plan to kick Bob and Amy when they were down. During the explosion incident, I chose to follow my conscience. Later, I realized that revenge wasn't life's goal. Getting back at a cheater wasn't the ultimate aim. Living happily and better was what truly mattered. Hate was just a small interlude in life. I started getting involved in company affairs, worked hard, and soon became a well-praised woman in business. At a family celebration, my brother praised me. "Monica, how did you get so good?" "Oh, it's nothing," I said modestly. Dad chimed in, "Monica's not just capable, the key is her perseverance. She always sticks to her principles, which is why she succeeded." I sipped on my champagne and smiled subtly. Years of pain shaped my character and taught me patience beyond the ordinary, honing my ability to read people. During the explosion, fate forced a choice on me, affirming my resolve that having beliefs and principles is crucial. Only then could I remain steadfast and fearless in business. Marriage is no longer a necessity for me. Maybe I'll meet someone special and get married again, but next time, I'll be way more careful.